Hello guys, Sirgranelot here. Today I could on stream, and on stream I wanted to do a run with just 4-star characters to clear the current Abyss. Since I didn't stream, I decided to do it off stream, using 4-star characters that I consider reasonable for this Abyss rotation. The problem for me was Collei. What I mean by that is, the tricky part for me was the first half of the 12th floor, because the first chamber is mostly AoE, while second and third chambers are single target. What this meant was that if I wanted to make a Hyper Bloom team that worked well on the top half, I absolutely needed Collei. Because you need a ranged character or, Nico, Kachin, you know, some shenanigan character to get rid of the Aeon Blight Drake. My Collei is level 40, with all talents at level 1, so she was not really workable for the task. And what I decided to do is something that anyone who is missing correct character should do, which is I cleared the first chamber with a couple of groups, teams, and then the second and third chamber with different teams. So here I used the Bait Official Sacros Yao Yao, basically an aggravate team plus Sacros. In the second half I wanted to use something like a national team, but since Sacros was busy in the first half, I used the Hazel with 4 pieces Viridescent Venera. This is a team that in the second half works very well. It's a bit tricky in the second and third chamber, because Bennett can be a little bit problematic there. You can get one shot every now and then. But in general, this is a kind of team that works well. You just need to set up everything properly, try to play around with the funnel impact a little bit. How many times did it take me to do this run? Well, the first chamber, using these teams that you see right now, it took me one try. I just played normally and everything lined up well. I didn't have particular issues with these two doggies, the purple doggy and the green doggy, because I'm not super familiar with the moveset of the green doggy yet, but the purple doggy, so to speak, he's been in the Abyss already, and I'm pretty familiar with what he does and what he doesn't do. So I didn't have major issues here in the first chamber. Now, when it comes to the second and third chamber, though, we had quite a little bit more work to do. I did not use any limited weapon on any of the characters that you see. I only use 4-star, free-to-play, and I think a Skyward Blade on Bennett, maybe? I think so. So nothing too spectacular. Now, this chamber, the second one, the Aeon Blight dude, if you can clear it in a minute and a half with whatever teams you have available, you are good. And he's the reason why I really needed to have Fischl in the top half. Because if I had a well-built Collei, she would have been perfect here, to apply even more Dendro, help more with the Bloom and all the sort of shenanigans. But unfortunately, my Collei is not up to task. Yeah, the first half here does not really require a lot of comments. It's just a dude, you shoot at it, and eventually it dies. Ideally in 1 minute. I had a few rotations in which I killed it in 1 minute before it went in the air again, but more often than not it took me 1:15, something like that. It was not ideal, but it was not even a disaster. Remember that before it starts to fly again, you can shoot it again. You just need to shoot his face around now. Yeah, if you shoot his face before it goes up, it's better. You're going to save a few seconds over what I did right now. Unfortunately, I was on the side, I was not paying attention to the time too much, and from the side you cannot shoot straight in its face. Now, the second half is... how to say that? Cancer. It's absolute cancer. Because the goblins, I call this dude goblins. The Hydro goblins can do one thing. One is they throw balls at you, or they rush at you. Sometimes they run at you after throwing balls, sometimes they don't. I'm sure there is a pattern, I have not found it yet, and since it's the second half, I refuse to study it. I just accepted the fact that probably 10 or 12 runs, around that amount of runs, I just had to restart them because the goblins were staying 5 kilometers away from me instead of approaching. If there is a secret illegal tech to let them make close to you, good, follow it. I don't have the tech for you. I'm sorry. The second half is very difficult, but luckily it's mechanics that we already had in the Abyss, so I knew that, you know, you go to hit the animal lady and everyone else joins the fight, eventually, in theory. So, although it was pretty hectic, because if you get too close, you run the risk of getting one shot, and if you stay too far, with this team that I used, you're not dealing any damage. At the end of it, I still had more than around half a minute left. Yeah, exactly half a minute left. It took me many tries though, and most of it was because of the Hydro Goblins. Last chamber, the Giga Dorito, if you have Hyper Bloom, is going to be very easy, as long as your Cookie or Dory or any Electro is level 90. Built full Elemental Mastery. My Cookie is on 4 pieces Gilded Dreams. I think that at the end of the run I will show the build. And she doesn't have anything outrageous, just a very normal build. I recently got her Constellation 6, but it doesn't really make much difference. The important thing is, you know, make it land, dump into its soul and get rid of it. The second half is going to be the Mango Kinkies. It took me quite a few tries, because unfortunately sometimes you get hit 1 second before you try to iframe the Cryo Burst, and you get hit by the Cryo Burst and you die. Sometimes, you know, you make a mistake, you have everything down when there is the Cryo Burst, you cannot iframe it. Sometimes you try to dodge it, you dodge at the wrong time. Mistakes happen. But in general, at least the last chamber, mechanically speaking, doesn't require much. It's stuff that we all know very well. In terms of difficulty, I think this felt one of the hardest rotations to clear with 4-star characters, mainly because it felt like I needed more investment in my characters. I'm sure that with Collei would have been easier, and I don't have a build Collei. None of my 4-star characters that I use rarely, like Keia, Sacros and other, none of them have a very good build, and even Xianling is not built particularly well. So although I have constellations for them, the builds are very, very questionable. But it was definitely hard to do with 4-star characters. Definitely hard. It took me a bit less than for the previous rotation, the one with the 3.5 with the Winat, but it felt harder. With the Winat, it felt like I had to reach a point of DPS that I could kill the Winat in 2 cycles, and so there was nothing difficult mechanically speaking, in terms of dodging, grouping and all this sort of stuff. Here there is quite a lot of dodging, grouping and other things to do basically in all chambers, at least in one half, and so yeah, it's a little bit harder. It definitely rewards investment, but it also rewards a lot knowing what monsters do, how to avoid taking damage and all this sort of stuff. Here, if I had no soul, I would have kept rerunning until I had a run where the 3 Mango Kinkies died at the same time, just to make it look prettier. It didn't happen, but whatever. We got full stars. Here are the builds of the 10 characters that I use rather than 8, because again, no Collei. And mostly fairly standard builds that I use. Just as I was downloading the cards from Enka, I noticed that I had Skyward Atlas on Heizo. I wish I had Codex, the Favonius Codex on him to avoid having to funnel energy into Xianling, because in this team he doesn't deal much damage at all. I would have far preferred Favonius Codex. Official, I used the Stringless instead of Skyward Harp, just to remove an extra 5-star weapon, and yeah, all the other builds pretty standard for my account. Hello, Sir Grangrot.